Okay, looks like we're live recording. Okay, hey everybody, welcome aboard to tonight's live Path to Profit webinar. This is Gary Wilson. Welcome to all of you, whether you're in the Investor Agent Training Program, the Flipping Program, the Rentals Program. Now there's multiple programs. There's one on buying rentals. We call that Rental Profits Without the Pain. There's another one on managing your rentals, which is called Turning Rental Problems into Real Estate Profits. In fact, I had a class today in Michigan, Grand Blanc, which is sort of near Flint. Flint got a lot of notoriety in the last couple of years. Most people know where Flint is. And one of the students there, in fact, he signed up for the program. He may be on tonight, I'm not sure, was talking about this very subject, like what do we do with these rentals where we have, rentals that cause problems, tenants that cause problems, where there absolutely is a way to not only avoid that or prevent that, but to actually successfully invest in rental properties that are not only cash flowing, but don't have a pile of deferred maintenance and lots of headaches and so forth and so on. So in any case, another program will be wholesaling, and that one's, we're going to be promoting that one probably in February or March. It's been about a year, and people have been asking about it, so we're going to go ahead and do that one probably February or March. In any case, back to this. Welcome aboard to all the new or newer folks. Doesn't matter where you're from. Some of you are from Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware. Some newer folks from Michigan. Welcome aboard, and welcome aboard to all the veterans, no matter where you're from. We've been now in all 48 of the lower 48 states and 3 Canadian provinces. As many of you know, I live part-time in the States and part-time in Canada. In fact, my wife's Canadian, so I'm here right now in London, Ontario. So we are recording now. We are live. If you're listening to this in recorded mode, it's probably because you were not on the live event, or you just want to refresh your memory, which is perfectly fine. We definitely encourage you to do that. For the new or newer folks, you also recognize you're by default in mute mode. Okay, obviously that's by design from the vendor here. It's called GoToWebinar, so that not all 100 and some odd people are speaking at the same time. Okay, and you'll notice you do have the ability to type in questions in your question box, and I will from time to time pause in the material and go over the questions. Okay, so in any case, a couple things here. Whether you're live on this right now or you're listening to this in recorded mode at a future date, always look excuse me, for the emails that Beverly sends out after these webinars. And the reason is not only do you get the recording, you also get vital information. She's usually communicating with us, telling us what's been modified on the systems, the different platforms, what material has been updated, and also instructions to follow for certain circumstances. So you definitely always want to look at that email from Beverly and follow her instructions. She's usually giving you stuff that's relevant and pertinent to whatever program you're in. So definitely look for those. Okay, let me do a real quick scan on questions here, guys, before we jump into the materials. So let's go back into the question box. Let's see, looks like everybody's okay. You're just saying you can see the screen and hear my voice. That's wonderful news. All right, let me drop that back down so we know we're clear right now. So I know there's no outstanding questions at the moment. The attendee list, I want to just make sure there's a few people on here that I've been looking for. Hey Bernard, welcome aboard, man. Boy, we do have some brand new folks today. So Bernard, I'm so glad you're on. This is going to be, so Bernard, this is going to be a big deal tonight. We're going to, for you personally, this is going to be jumping ahead into the material, into the second module. Okay, we're going to focus specifically on rentals. Okay, so in any case, Faisal's on. Hey Faisal, Faisal's a veteran, just had a great call the other day. Let me double check here. I'm looking for Lou. There's Lou. Hey Lou. I was out last week down at my mom's house in rural Virginia, which means there's just not a lot. I mean, they're so far out. Their main road is a dirt road. So I did get your text message this morning when I was driving into Michigan. I left about 5 in the morning to go teach, and in any case, I figured I'd see you tonight. But back to your question, Lou, one of the questions was, can you jump ahead in the material? So what I'm going to do is check with Beverly and see if she can release that to you. because I know your background, I know your history, and I think you're definitely a candidate for that. So in any case, so keep an eye out for that. Let's see. Mary Tablata. Hey, Mary, how are you doing? All right, we've got a great call with Mary today. Let's see. Well, we got a lot of, this is a packed night tonight, so maybe everybody's fresh back from Thanksgiving. Okay, let's go ahead and get started here, guys, so we can jump into this and make sure we cover this fully tonight. If we need to, we'll do another session next week just on rentals. So tonight what I want to do is go through the process step by step of how do you actually determine which rentals to make offers on, okay? Now, there's several calculations. I don't want to get into those tonight in a lot of detail. If we have to, we'll do that on another night. What I might want to do is go through what we call the behavioral skills, okay? There's academic skills and there's behavioral skills. Academic skills are things that I can teach you, generally speaking, within a few moments, like a calculator, for example. Some of them might take 20 minutes. Some of them are very short. Behavioral skills generally take longer. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to go into a set of behavioral skills, okay? And when you master this, I promise you, you're going to, even though it's going to take some time to master it, once you do, your path to either cashing a check on a commission or acquiring a rental is going to be much, much faster and much less risky, much more profitable. You would very rarely miss an opportunity or make a mistake. So that's why we're so intent on this. So a lot of this is going to be new. Just hang in there, and this is definitely one of the ones you want to listen to, watch, or download. You can strip off the audio several times. In fact, there's several recordings out there where we go into this in great detail. So first things first. All right, buying rentals. There's lots of ways to buy rentals, but there's two basic strategies. One of them is turnkey, which means you're buying a property that's in service. Okay, it's a marketable condition, which means people can live there and you can rent it out to earn a living. Okay, turnkey means basically you stick the key in, you turn the key, you open the door, and you make money from day one, hour one, minute one, second one. Okay, that's my preferable method. All right. Now, having said that, what a lot of people do when they're first starting out is they just simply can't afford a lot. So they'll buy the cheaper properties that have management issues or physical building issues or tenant issues, and that's okay if you want to play that game that way. I will tell you, I did it, and it'll cause you to get a lot of gray hair. It also will take you forever to build up enough substantial wealth and income to be able to retire. Okay. In fact, we talked about that today in class. I drew a picture and it came up in class. All right. The second most popular way to buy rentals is to buy wholesale. That doesn't mean you're, it's not using wholesale as a strategy. There's a separate strategy called wholesaling. We'll talk about that another night. What we're talking about here is buying typically below market value. Okay. You're buying below market value because generally the property has issues. Again, either of a physical nature or of a management nature. So you're buying below market value. You're going to remodel, okay? In most cases, there's delayed or deferred maintenance on these properties. And so while a lot of us may be thinking, okay, I'm going to buy a cheap property because I'm going to save money, just know this, you're going to make up for it in one way, shape, or form at some time. It could be in the form of putting in a lot of money into capital improvements. It could be putting in money into change of management. It could be putting money into cleaning house, which means getting rid of bad tenants and replacing them with good tenants. It could be a combination of any of those three things, or in some certain cases, all three of those things at the same time. But the bottom line is you go through some type of remodeling or rehab or revamping management. And then you can either sell the property when you're done. Believe it or not, flipping rentals is a very good, viable alternative. It's a great strategy because most people only consider flipping single-family homes. And that's all well and good, but the fact is when you flip a rental property, let's say it's a 4-unit building, 4 apartments. Okay, generally speaking, throughout a year, every lease is going to come due. You can choose to not renew a lease, remodel that unit, bring it up to a higher level of marketability, rent it for more rent, Okay, and then the next lease comes due, you do that unit. Now, some of you are in New Jersey thinking, can I really do that? And the answer is yes, you can. However, there are certain rules to this. In New Jersey, certain parts of Canada, specifically Toronto, certain parts of California, like LA and San Francisco, even certain parts of New York, you can't just not renew a lease. You have to have the tenant of agreement to not renew the lease. Now, if you read the fine print, it will tell you that you can not renew a lease if you're going to be bringing the property to up to current standards, to current codes, basically safe, clean, reliable, and up to code. That is a legitimate reason. And in this case, that's exactly what you're doing. What I'm getting at is, while you're remodeling one unit, the other units are bringing in cash flow, which means you're not sitting there with the property bleeding profusely while you own it and remodel it. Rental properties, as long as you do this correctly, generally will keep bringing in income while you're remodeling one unit. Just do one at a time, okay? In any case, obviously the main reason most people buy properties is to keep the property, right? In the case of rentals, you want to keep it, buy and hold, which means you'll generally do this: rent the thing out, and if you have remodeled it and raised all the rents, you can go back and refinance at a later date. Some banks make you wait a year. Some of them let you do it as soon as you're ready. In other words, seasoning is not an issue with those latter banks. Okay, 2 basic strategies. Let's move forward here. All right. We talked about the 2 basic strategies already. Now, what I'll do is I might get into an example here, which is 3834 Brighton. This property was bought. This is a long time ago. This is probably going back 20 years. All right, so everything's relative. You might want to quadruple or quintuple these figures here to be more accurate and more current. Bottom line is this: we paid 20 grand for the property, put 15 into it. All right, it was worth about 65 when we were done. We got a brand new bank note on the property, a mortgage for 45,000. So if you take 45,000, right, and you subtract the 20 plus 15, which is 35,000, you'll see that when I refinanced, I put 10,000 in my pocket. All right. In any case, I eventually sold the property for 70 grand, which means when you look at my cost basis, 20 plus 15 is 35. I doubled my money on the sale. Not to mention I got some of it back at an earlier date when I refinanced, and also had cash flow during the whole time I owned it. But let's just look at this as an example before we get into the behavioral patterns, okay? All right, basic bread and butter property, duplex. It was a large up and down. There was 1 bedroom on the first floor, 3 bedrooms on the second and third floor combined, and a garage we rented separately in the back, okay? Again, these are old figures. You'd probably want to triple or quadruple these based on today's standards on average. If you're in New York City or downtown Toronto, you're going to make these maybe 10 times, right? Rents have gotten, well, maybe not 10 times, maybe 5 times, okay? All right, okay, expenses. So you got your income, you got your expenses. These are on an annual basis. Oops, excuse me. Taxes were pretty low back then. They're a little bit higher now. Insurance, and we use always we use what's called the basic form. We'll talk about insurance more at a later date, but when you own multiple properties, you can reduce your risk and reduce your costs by using what's called the basic form of insurance, or the A form, okay? In any case, you can see what the water costs per year there, and after, remember, we remodeled this place, so our annual maintenance and repair cost was not that great, very minimal. I mean, this is like, changing doorknobs and things like that, right? So net operating income on this property, if you took the annual income and minus the annual expenses, you'll see we were making almost 11,000 bucks, 10,793 net on that property. That does not include debt service. All it is right now is net operating income, which is income minus expenses, non-debt expenses. In other words, non-mortgage expenses. All right. Now, when I sold the property, I sold it for 70 grand. The buyer put down 14 grand. Financed the other 56,000 at 20 years for 5%. We do highly encourage you to use 20-year mortgages, by the way, right? And their monthly mortgage payment was $370 a month. Okay, so if you take the debt service and subtract it from your your net operating income, okay, you still get a pretty good cash flow here of $63.58 per year, right? Now that cash on cash return is 45%. What that means is the buyer is making $63.58 a year after expenses and mortgage payments. You divide that by your down payment, in this case $14,000, and that resulting ratio is your what's called cash on cash return. Not the same as cap rate. Cap rate is different. Cap rate is your net operating income, in this case $10,793.54. Divide that by the total purchase price, in this case 70 grand. That's how you get cap rate. So you see the difference between cap rate and cash return is this. Cap rate is your net operating income before mortgage payments divided by the total price of the property. That's cap rate. Cash on cash return is your actual cash in pocket, which is income minus all expenses, including mortgage payments, divided by only the down payment, or if you had maybe you had to put a roof on, you would add to that also. That is your cash on cash return. So in any case, I just want to go over that briefly so you have sort of a starting point here. In all of your material, you have this. You can review this on your own, and we highly encourage you to do that, okay, and bring in your own examples, right? So we just went over that example, all right? Now what I want to do is this: I'm not going to go over the cash flow formulas, okay? We're going to save that for another date. What I want to do right now is slide my panel over and get down into the actual process that we used when we walk through the process. We want to walk through the process we use. These are calculators we'll do at a later date, so just don't worry that I'm passing these up. This is what I want to get to, okay? Hang on one second. Let me get back down here to get to the right starting point. Then I'm going to do a quick pause for questions, and then we'll get into it. So these are the step-by-step instructions for working with rental investors. Whether you're investing yourself or you're working with an investor, you're an agent working with an investor, this is the same process. So let me check for questions here real quick, guys, before we continue. All right? Because I just gave you kind of a handful there when I went over the cap rate and the cash on cash return. And the reason I did that is when you work with investors, the right kind of investors, this is how we instruct you to work. Cap rate is obviously important, but a more important ratio is what we call the cash on cash return. That's why we just went over that. So you'll find when you work with investors who actually know what they're doing, or are more sophisticated, or they've been at it for a while, you'll quickly discover that they're starting to use the term cash on cash return. They ask what that is, and can you get the data to help them determine what that is. When you get to that point, you know you're working with the right kind of investor, okay? And actually, going back to Robert Kiyosaki, that was one of the things that we actually talked about, is the fact that once investors get to the point where they really learn to look at this as a business, because it is, that they tend to focus more on cash return. They do use cap rate to help them determine the nature of the area and the property relative to the area, but they use cash on cash return to make ultimate decisions like, do I buy this or not? If the cash on cash return is substantial enough, most people would buy it. The example I just gave you, the cash on cash return was, I think, was it 45% or something? That's pretty crazy. That's pretty good. A lot of investors are satisfied with a 20% cash on cash return. Now, if you're in a really expensive area like Toronto, New York City, you're likely to get a 10% cash on cash return. Cap rate will even be lower. Cap rate, I mean, heck, I've seen people buy properties with 2 and 3% cap rates. I've even seen people buy properties with negative cash flows because they're banking on appreciation. But nonetheless, let's get to this point. This is the most important part of the night, and it's going to probably take me a few minutes to get through this. Okay, and I highly encourage you to chime in and ask questions if you're not sure of anything, if you're stuck on something. Definitely, please let me know, guys. From time to time, I will unmute you, and we can have a live conversation everybody's going to hear. Okay, so we got a question here. Hang on one second, from Stacy. Hey, Stacy. Stacy is asking, okay, do we run the cash on cash return rate for our investors, or do we show them how to do it? So Stacy, I would definitely show them how to do it. Now, having said that, you know the old adage, you're better off teaching a person to fish rather than giving them a fish. We actually encourage you to do both in the beginning. So we want you to learn the process yourself. So absolutely, with new investors, calculate the cash on cash return, Stacy, and then give that to them, but show them how you did it, because you want them to learn and be able to do that on their own going forward. I mean, not that they're not going to need you. They definitely still need you. Believe me, you've got the tools, you've got the inventory, all right? And not to mention the fact you have the license, okay? But the reality is in the beginning, we do advocate giving one fish and teaching them how to fish so that they have that knowledge and the skill going forward. So great question, by the way. Thank you for bringing that question up. Okay, back to this, step-by-step instructions for working with rental investors. It looks almost identical to what we use for the flipping methodology, except when we get down to the evaluation part, we're now focusing on evaluating these properties more based on what's called the income approach to valuation. We're more interested in income than we are the physical nature of the building. I know it sounds strange to say that to some of you, but just know this. If a property doesn't make sense on paper initially, you would never go look at it. So one of the things you're going to learn here tonight is we actually do the math first to the best of our abilities and to the best of our abilities based on the information we have available. Okay? Then and only then do we go do physical drive-bys and physically look at buildings, okay? When you do it the other way around, you'll quickly realize you're going to be working yourself to the bone, looking at a lot of properties, only to find out you had no business looking at most of those properties. We get financials up front. I'm going to show you how to do this, okay? Do the financial analysis as best we can to eliminate the wheat from the chaff, and then we go look at physical properties. We're only looking at the ones that make the most sense so far on paper. And then we go in and we revamp our numbers once we've seen the properties, okay? So let's just go through it. It'll make a whole lot more sense, okay? First thing we do is this. Let's assume we're just going to work with the MLS for the moment. Obviously, we don't do that. We use lots of other tools, but the MLS is one tool that everybody understands and we all have in common. So we'll just talk about that for a second. Let's go with this as if we're an agent for the moment, and then later on we'll show you how to look at this if you're an investor who does not have a license. Okay, so in the beginning, the reason we do it this way, by the way, guys, is we want the investors to learn this process too, so that when you're working with your investor agents, you're both singing from the same song sheet. You're both working in concert with each other. It makes for a much more profitable relationship, much better use of both of your times, okay? And you'll know why here in about 20 minutes. So first things first, you have your conversation, investor and investor agent. Having a conversation on the phone, we generally call this the interview, okay? Obviously establish rapport first, and once you do, ask more specific questions, find out really what their intent is, what their objective is, okay? And at that point, then you can get into more finite details, like what do they have to work with as in the way of assets or capital. So I always like to ask them myself is what do they have in savings, so you know their cash position. I want to know if they have an available line of credit, so that if they need to strike quickly, they can stroke a check from a line of credit to tie up a property. And also, what is their credit score? I mean, I want to know that if I'm working with someone who's going to require a loan to buy the property, I want to make sure that I'm working with qualified people. And it's not being rude or disrespectful. It's actually being very respectful to them and to yourself, okay? So in any case, once you get through the interview, all right, this is one of the most important things I learned is when I'm working with an investor is to say, you know what, that was a great conversation. I'm looking forward to working with you. Would you do me a favor? Please send me an email recapping our conversation in your own words. So let me repeat that. Would you please email me with a recap of our conversation in your own words? So this is you, the investor agent, asking the investor. Now, if you're an investor, you're going to use this process. Obviously, you don't need that, but just know this. If you are working with investor agents, the ones who are properly trained are going to be going through this exercise with you, so it's in your best interest to hang in there and learn this process, okay? Now, what I'm looking for is a level of commitment. The people who send me the email are showing it's like a small commitment that later on will lead to larger commitments. They're also demonstrating to me that they're willing to take action, which is extremely important. If somebody won't email you back from the first conversation, my gosh, I wouldn't. I mean, I will tell you in the beginning, yes, I did work with them because I didn't know any better. But I learned very quickly to not work with those folks because they're telling you, they're showing you with their behavior that they're not an action taker, they're not willing to commit, and they're certainly not engaging with you, which is the third thing. So the three things are this. Showing a level of commitment by doing a small thing, which is send an email. Demonstrating engagement, they're engaging with you on an even level. They think of you as a valuable member of their team to help them build wealth and income, okay? And it's because you've demonstrated value with the tools you have and the skills and the education. And the third thing is quite frankly, they're willing to take action. I mean, if they're not willing to take action on a small scale, believe me, they're not going to be taking action on a large scale, okay? So in any case, I'm looking for the email. And once I receive the email, this isn't written on here. Let me just go over this with you. What I do then is, this is for all the agents out there, I require a buyer's agency agreement, okay? Now, it may seem unusual to do that when you're working with investors, but just know this. When you demonstrate value, you deserve to be paid for your efforts, okay? And quite frankly, you're going to have other tools available to you as a result of this that most other agents don't have. Everybody has the MLS, no doubt about it, which is another reason to get that form signed, because if every agent is only going to use most cases only use the MLS, they're all going to be providing the same inventory, right? So you want to make sure that you're the one being paid. So if an investor ever says, well, I'm working with 4 or 5 other investors, I will tell them, so I'm glad to work with you, but here's how I operate. This is how I work when I work with investors. I'm an investor too, and it's worth it for you to work with me exclusively, because not only will I give you the same properties every other agent will, I'm going to give you a lot of other properties that they're not going to have access to that I do, okay? So in any case, bottom line is this. Once I get that back, then I will then set them up on a search. I will also go to work to use other tools to locate inventory for them, okay? Now, assuming right now we're just going to look at the MLS. Let's just assume we're going to just use the MLS for the moment, okay? Knowing that there are other tools we do have available to us. I just want to get through the exercise here so you understand how to go through this step by step. First thing is you set up the search on the MLS. And the output that we want is going to be what we call the full listing with photos. Now, there are some parts of the country, let me just qualify this. There's 404 different boards in the US and Canada. And there's about 5 different MLS systems available now, but there's 404 versions of those of those systems, okay? So one of those I just came across, and I can't remember exactly where it was, is I don't know if it was their broker or their board did not make it a feature where the agents could provide the full listing to their clients, which I think is extremely unusual. It's the only one I've ever seen. Guys, I have literally taught in all 48 of the lower 48 states and 3 Canadian provinces. It's the only time I've seen it. But in any case, regardless, let's assume you have access, or you have the type of system that allows you to provide what's called a full listing with photos, right? You just want to make sure you give the clients as much information, excuse me, as you possibly can. Okay, now, they're going to get an initial batch of listings, your client is. In this case now, so those of you who are simply investors and not agents, you want to kick into high gear now and be fully attentive, okay? You're going to get these properties provided to you. Now let's say they're not just, I know we just said we're going to focus on the MLS, but let's just say we've got properties now that we discovered by using other marketing tools to come up with the inventory. Regardless, let's just say you got a batch of them, right, to look at. The goal is this, is to narrow that list down, excuse me, to about 30 properties, okay? And the reason is we're not going to do analysis on 100 properties. We're not going to do drive-bys on 100 properties, all right? We're not going to, physically look at and analyze 100 properties. We want to do our work, our analysis on as few properties as possible using a scientific method. All right. So let's just start here where we are. We got a batch of properties. We want to narrow that batch of properties down as much as we possibly can. And here's how we do it. Let's say we start off with 100, like we said. The first thing we're going to do is look at what the asking price is for the property. Okay, it's not the most important thing. In fact, in and of itself, it's meaningless. Okay, we really don't care what somebody is asking for the property in and of itself, but we do care what someone's asking for the property relative to other factors, like what is the fair market value of the property. Okay, so in this case, you or your agent needs to have a pretty good understanding of the area. We suggest it's both of you. All right. In other words, you should have a really good idea of what rentals are selling for, price per unit, also relative to numbers of bedrooms per unit. You know, 1-bedroom units generally don't cost as much as 3-bedroom units, for example. Okay. And other factors too. So in any case, what we're doing is this. The first comparison is the asking price for the property compared to what we believe is a fair market value for that type of property in that area. Now, the good news is, in most MLS systems, they actually give you what's called an appraiser's value for tax purposes. All right, they often will give you 2 tax assessment values. One is the one that they believe is the fair market value for that type of property in that area, and the other one is the value that they use for tax purposes. How do they calculate the property taxes on that property is often different than what the street value or appraisal value of the property is. Just bear that in mind. We're more interested, obviously, in what we consider the actual market value or street value of the property. Okay, knowing that the tax assessors often do some interesting things with valuations that result in those valuations not being equivalent to fair market value. So first pass is we look for properties that are the list price is favorable or commensurate with the value for that type of property in that area, the fair market value, at or below. Anything where the list price or the asking price is greater than that, we're going to eliminate it. We're not going to look at it. We're just going to basically get rid of it and get it out of your way. It's going to just do nothing but tie up time and resources unnecessarily. Okay, you're going to know why here in about 10 minutes, so just hang in there. Okay, now, so we got through the first pass. We now narrowed things down dramatically to only properties that we believe are favorably priced in a way that we think we can strike a good deal. And then we're going to look at more information. In the case of rentals, we're going to start focusing more on the actual rents themselves. Okay, now you have to have a pretty good idea of what rents are for the area, what are fair market rents. It's easy to do. There's all kinds of sources of data. There's online sources of data. You can also use local publications, your penny savers, your green sheets, your Sunday papers. You can look at Craigslist ads. You can even go to the ones I don't like, which are like Zillow and things like that, and see what people are asking for rent for similar properties. Okay. The bottom line is this: you're looking for properties where the rents are at or below market value, and here's why. It might be great to think, gee, I can get a property here potentially where the rents are higher than the average market rent for the area. Now that may sound tempting, but the thing is, what it'll do is you might find yourself not being able to have rent raises for quite some time. I love looking for properties where the current owner or manager is not up to date on rents, where the properties that they're selling have not had rent raises for quite some time. And I see that a lot. That's one of the forms of mismanagement, which is people don't understand, owners don't understand that they need to raise rents on a regular basis. They may even understand it, they just don't have the gumption to do it. Okay. So the bottom line is you want to have rents that leave you room for rent increases. but not too low, because this can backfire too. In other words, let's say you want to buy the property with a loan, and you go to a lender, and the lender sees these low rents. They might not give you the loan, or they might give you a lesser loan amount because the rents are so low relative to market value. So just bear in mind, everything that we tell you has limitations, okay? In any case, what we're looking at is rents in a certain range, and you'll see here the range can be pretty broad. In this case, there's a 25% range here, all right, 25% range here. Now, we're also looking at the same time here, expenses. We're looking at taxes, insurance, water, maintenance and repairs, so forth and so on. And whenever we come across a situation where some of these figures do not seem to be aligned with market values, or they looks like they could spell trouble, throw the property away. Just pull it out, bundle it up, whatever, throw it away, get rid of it. And the reason is you're going to have other opportunities that are going to be much more probable, have much higher probability of providing a return for you and your investor. Okay, so in any case, eliminate the properties that don't look good on a financial basis. Okay, now you might even do a third pass coming up here, which is this. Pay attention to average price per unit. So if you know that on average properties are selling for $35,000 per unit on average for a 3-bedroom unit, you don't want to be paying more than that. Obviously, you want to be paying, less than that, preferably. But in any case, it's another way to eliminate the wheat from the chaff, to separate the wheat from the chaff. Again, when you first do this, guys, I promise you it's going to seem a little bit awkward, because you're going to be discarding properties that you might think, well, maybe I can make that one work. You may have to make something work at the end of the day, but we want to do that on as few properties as possible. What we're attempting to do here is narrow down our list of drive-by properties. By the way, we're not driving by them. The investors are driving by them. By the way, you're going to notice here a quick note. Different areas will have vastly different pricing models. Study your area and make adjustments accordingly. Lots of resources to do that. But the bottom line is you would definitely want to get familiar with what rents are, price per units, things like that, for properties you're looking for, similar properties in the areas you want to be buying in, okay? Other variables include the fact that you might be buying turnkey versus the buy versus the rehab approach, okay? So, if you have a property, if you're looking at buying a property with a lot of deferred maintenance, you first want to do the calculations on the income approach first. And then what you do to determine your asking price, determine your offer price for the property, is you would subtract the capital improvements that are required to make the property marketable. You need to subtract those values off the top before you make your offer. So let's say we came up with a property that on paper looks like it should be worth $100,000 if it was in marketable condition based on the average rents and so forth. And you go to look at the property and it has $30,000 in deferred maintenance, like capital improvements. In other words, it needs a new roof today. It needs a new furnace today, things like that. You would deduct the cost of those from your offer right off the bat, okay? That's an important distinction that a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't account for that. They realize, well, I can rent the place now and make some money later on and do the roof. That may be fine, but account for the roof today before you make the offer, okay? The bottom line is to trust your instincts, focus on what you think are the best deals, eliminate the rest, and you get better with experience. So now let's say we're down there with drive-bys. We're going to drive by these 30 properties, okay? These are the ones we're going to actually drive by. Typically, your clients are doing this. The investors are doing this, not the agents. And they're going to narrow that list down by half again, cut it in half, 10 to 15 properties at most, all right? Now, so they narrow that down. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to send you, this is the case of an investor sending the final list of properties back to the agent who provided them to begin with, all right, to set up appointments. Now, we're not going to look at 15 properties, okay? That would take 2 days, right? We want to look at best somewhere between 5 and 7 properties. Turns out 6 is like the magic number. I know it says 7 right here, but you want to make it no more than 7 and typically no less than 3. And we believe 5, 6, 7 is like the magic number. That's just based on our 20 some odd, good Lord, 30 years, 32, 33 years experience. So in any case, we've got this narrowed down. Now the agent is going to be calling to set up appointments to see these properties. All right, that's going to typically take a day, but you do not want to wait too much longer to see these properties, because if everything we've done is correct, there's other people out there who could be smart also, and they're going to determine, hey, you know what, these are the best of the best properties that I want to take a look at. So we have to move fast at this point. This is not the kind of thing you say, let's get together, after the holidays. Don't do that, because those properties will be gone, right? You're going to look at these properties like within the next couple of days, as soon as you can make appointments, all right? So you schedule the appointments, you go look at them, and here's where we finally get down to brass tacks, okay? Couple things. Let's say you do look at your 7 properties, 6 properties, whatever the case is. You want to try to narrow that down to somewhere between 1 and 3 properties. We used to say 4. I would say, narrow it down to 3 if you can. Maybe it is 4. Maybe you just can't eliminate more than 3 of the original 7. What we're going to do now is your client is going to be, or if you're an investor, you're doing this yourself, fill in the rehab sheets for the properties and add up all of the deferred maintenance, okay? Then you're going to subtract this from what you believe is the fair offer of a property. You're going to subtract your capital improvements that are necessary to bring the property up to code, put it in service, in marketable condition, okay? Now here's where things get interesting. Let's say you've just looked at your 6 or 7 properties. It's the end of the day. I know everybody's getting tired, but before you leave the scene, always do this, and don't ever forget this, please, because you'll pay a dear price for it. Some agents might say, you know what, this was a great day. Let me know when you're ready to make a move, and then I'll see you later. Don't ever do that. What you do is this. If you have a truck, you pull down your tailgate. If you're in a car, just use your back trunk lid, make that your office, or go sit at Starbucks somewhere if you want to, or Panera Bread. Lay out the final 3 or 4 properties side by side. The listings, the rehab sheets, the cash flow analysis sheets side by side. The goal here is to eliminate this down to the final property we're going to actually make an offer on, maybe 2 of them, okay, if you're having a good day. What you do is you have them, your consumer, look at them side by side and just compare 2 at a time. This is what I used to do. It's okay, between these 2 properties, which one would you want most to have? Which one could you most likely live without? And of course, you take that one and you put it aside. Now you're left with the 1 property. Then you do the next comparison with the next property. You're going to do this comparison amongst the properties until you get down to the final one. Do you think, you know what, this is the one I want to make an offer on? I can live without the others, or I want to make offers on these 2, whatever the case is. At that point, what I say is, okay, I want you to go home, review your cost sheets, review your rehab sheets, check your numbers, scan them to me, and I'm going to call you up at 9 o'clock tonight. We're going to go over these over the phone, over the computer. You're basically engaging with your client at a deeper level now, okay? And at 9 o'clock, you're going to have these scans on your computer. You're going to call them up and go over these scans and narrow it down to the one you're going to make the offer on. All right, and that's the one you write the offer on. You tell them, I'm going to have this to you in 10 minutes. Now you can use all kinds of electronic signature programs. There's dot loop, different programs you can use where you don't ever actually have to print anything off. So you have them sign everything, scan it back to you, along with a photocopy of the hand money check, and also a proof of funds if they're getting a loan, right? And that's what you use to submit your offer. That night, don't go to bed until the offer's in. The next day, the other agent's going to see that on their computer and get a response from me. And that, my friends, is how you narrow down the scope of your effort dramatically and only make good offers on the best of the best properties, not the most expensive, not the cheapest, only the ones that your analysis and your process told you should be making offers on. And if you did it correctly and did desktop analysis first, followed by physical viewing of the property, followed by a final summary review, when you make the offer, you don't have to make 50% on list price offers. It's not going to be required. you're going to make decent offers on decent properties that you're going to profit from. Okay. Now, let me do a quick pause here and let you guys type in questions. I see some questions have already come in, so let me get through those, and we're going to go back and start with the first question first and work our way through them. So hang on just 1 second. Okay, almost there. Looks like we got several of them. Okay, let's see. That's Yoko. Let's go. We've got some others before that. Hey, Esther, how you doing? That was Stacy's. Okay, this is from Esther. Hi, Esther. Esther is asking, okay, we only have a buyer agency agreement for residential. How do we get one for commercial? Well, right now, Esther, we're really just dealing with the smaller properties, you know, flips, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, things like that. Okay. You're going to build a relationship at that level. Later on, some of your clients are going to grow and evolve and be involved in larger properties. But at that point, you shouldn't have to worry about a buyer's agency agreement. You should have well since established that relationship and the loyalty between you and the client. Now, some of you have experienced this before where clients will run amok on you. Don't work with them. Okay, the way we do our business is we provide such value, and we also tend to attract new or newer investors to our business, which means it's easier to develop that loyalty. But also, Esther, you could actually use the same form for commercial. Just because it's on the residential database doesn't mean you can't use it for commercial. The buyer's agency agreement, by the way, that's what I'm talking about there. Okay, this is Yoko. Hang on, Yoko. Yoko's asking, okay, let's see, should we line out the info for the other agent so the investor doesn't try to negotiate the deal themselves? Oh, I see what you're saying. So actually, in fact, Yoko, we just talked about that. What she's asking, guys, is if you provide the full listing, should you use a black felt tip pen to blank out the contact information for the other agent? I never did that. I never had to. I mean, the way we go about this, Yoko, is you know, these people contact you initially based on the marketing you're doing. All right, you do the interview first. And remember, to them it's a conversation. To us, it's an interview. So you basically will do a lot of pre-qualifying there: timing, motivation, you know, readiness, willingness, ability. So you've already got people who've already established a bond with you. You shouldn't have that as an issue. And by the way, at the small level, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, initial contact, you should get that buyer's agency agreement signed. So you don't have to worry about them seeing the other agent's information. Okay, let's see. This is Michael Lucas. Hey, Michael. Let's see. Okay, what if there's a multifamily for sale at market value that needs remodeling and low rents? Would you not suggest this type of? Actually, no, Michael. I would probably look at that. I mean, I'd have to see all the numbers, of course. But if I see a multifamily listed at market value, now let's see, needs for remodeling, it has low rents. It would depend on the remodeling, Michael. So I would go look at the property, run a rehab sheet on it, see what deferred maintenance is. Also distinguish, Michael, between routine maintenance and capital improvements. So capital improvements would be your big items: roofing, plumbing, electrical, brand new kitchens, siding, things like that. If I see more than 2 major items on a project, I don't care how good the price is, I'm generally going to pass on it. And here's why. It's much safer to buy properties that have smaller remodeling projects, because the bigger the rehab project, the more risk. The projects run late, they go over budget. There's a lot more risk inherent with the bigger projects. So for me, Michael, I'm generally going to look for things that have 2 or fewer capital improvement requirements. Okay. Now with low rents, I'm not going to be too concerned unless the rents are like unbelievably low. And I actually had that happen to me one time. I mean, this one property, the rents were half of what they should have been. And lo and behold, when I went to get the loan from the bank, they actually took that in consideration and said, well, you know, we can only loan you so much because these rents are so low. We know you're going to raise the rents, Gary, but how long is it going to take you to double the rents? And they had a good point. Now, it took me a year, and quite frankly, I mean, one guy, the first guy, I thought, there's no way he's going to stay. By golly, if he didn't stay, he realized I was still giving him a good deal, right? It was easier for him to stay getting fair market value, fair market rent, as opposed to him having to go out and move and get a rental truck and all that kind of stuff. So the answer is I would actually look at that, depending on how much required maintenance there was. Okay, Daryl is next. Hey, Daryl. Right. Daryl says, I thought we were starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. No, Daryl, it's always 7 p.m. Eastern for these webinars. And, you know, like some of you are California, so it's obviously 4, now it's past, it's almost 5 p.m. out there, but they're always 7 p.m. So always check, Daryl, always check the emails from Beverly with the registration links, and they should all say 7 p.m. Hopefully there was no typo in there. Okay, let's see. This next one's from Fassel. Hey, Fassel, buddy. Fassel is asking, okay, what I have been noticing is when some investors have experience with 2 or more rental properties, they expect you just to send deals, not come in the office, nor do they want to sign a buyer's agent agreement. Any suggestions? Yeah. So Fassel, what I generally do is when I attract an investor who's got several properties and they just want to do things their way, what I generally do is I say, okay, let's do it your way this time. Okay, as long as you guarantee they will do it my way the next time. And as long as I get that, I'll do that. Now, some of it, I do that technique so I can convert them to doing things this way, because otherwise, what happens, Fassel, is if you fall into that trap where they say, just go find me a good deal, and you do the numbers and tell me when you come up with one that works, what that does is that shifts the burden of liability on you. So let's say the property, something pops up 6 months later and it ends up not being such a great deal. Now they'll come back at you. And that has happened, believe it or not, a lot actually. And if they file a complaint, they say, well, Gary or Fassel brought me this property. They said the numbers look good and I bought it because of what they told me. Turns out it's not such a good deal. Whoever the arbitrator is or the mediator is going to always find in favor of the consumer and not us because we're licensed. So we always want to provide the tools, the information, the inventory, and help our clients make the best decisions possible by giving them the guidance and the support, the counseling, and the information, tools, and inventory. But and I'll tell you, I know like there's a guy on tonight, Lou, and he'll tell you, yeah, I mean, he was a broker too, just like me. The old saying in real estate is location, location, location. But when you're a broker, the old saying is disclose, 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 and always disclose to them that, you know, not only is it in their best interest to make their own decisions, but it's in their best interest to know how to analyze things in multiple ways. And when you provide these types of tools to them, and you can provide them inventory that's outside the MLS, okay, remind them, Fassel, you're not just going to use the MLS to provide inventory. You're going to use other tools to locate inventory outside the MLS. And a lot of other agents just simply can't or won't do that. So you do bring value to the table. But that's what I would do. That's what I did. And you don't always convert those old guys, but that's the one approach I found that had the highest success rate for converting them to doing things this way. When you work with the newer investors, it's actually easier because they're not conditioned yet, and you can grow with them. And I've had people buy, my gosh, 10, 20, 30, even more than 40 properties with me over the years using these exact same processes, and they had no problem doing drive-bys. They had no problem looking at properties. The fact is if you think about it from a logistics standpoint, if they're just going to sit back and rely on you to bring deals to them, don't they assume that if that's the relationship, you're going to be providing deals to other investors too? And they have to wait. I mean, there's nothing worse than time. Time is the biggest deal killer I've ever seen. Everybody's got to move quickly in this business. You got to provide the inventory. They've got to look at it quickly, and you got to strike and make your offers quickly. If they're waiting on you to take all the time to do all that, um, by the time they get around to it, those properties are going to be gone. So in any case, sorry about to run on fast, but I know exactly where you're coming from, and I hope that dialogue there gives you some insight and some help there. So okay, guys, you know what? It looks like that was the last question. So let's do this. Let's go over some of the more advanced calculators next week. Okay, you all have these available to you on the silver level section of My Investment Services. So for those of you who are really new, just remember this. Get into all three platforms, the digital chalk platform, which is your learning platform. Get into the members area. So you go to myinvestmentservices.com, click on members area, and then drill down into the silver level and all the resources there. Everything is there. So Lou, this is, I think, what you were looking for the other day. And it sounds like you got into it already, so that's good. Third level is the community site, obviously. So in any case, always look for that, guys. Next week, we're going to take 2 of the calculators, go over them, actually 3 of them, excuse me, and go over them in great detail. We got another question here. Hang on one second. This is from Gabriella. Hi, Gabriella. Okay, what are the best reliable 3 tools you use to locate deals? So one of them, Gabriella, there's a letter we use to send to specific owners of specific properties. And if you go onto the silver level membership area, go into the recorded webinars. There's several of them out there on that particular subject. But go back to the one that's dated January of 2016. Matter of fact, Billy Maloney and I were discussing this today. I think it's January 27th, Gabriella. So you'll see on there 2016-01-27. It talks about the letter, how to use it, and how to locate the owners of the properties directly. But more importantly, specific kinds of owners, like those who are going through evictions. Maybe they're evicting tenants, for example. And that's probably one of the best tools. Going to small local banks. That's also that you can. So if you look at the subject lines, Gabriella, of the recordings, look for the one that talks about how to use the small local banks. That's another good tool. And there's other ones. I mean, there's 24 different tools you can use. I would say look at them and pick the ones you want. If you want to have a strategy call, let me know, and I can get more specific into your particular objectives and drill down and make some suggestions for you as far as which ones I think you should use. If you could do that, that would be awesome. So, okay, guys, good night tonight. I appreciate your being on board here, and I love serving you guys. I mean, a lot of you I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. We got some good things coming up next year. I'm going to go ahead and commit and tell you that we are going to have a conference, probably a couple of them, 1 or 2 in Florida, probably between February and March. Then we'll probably do one out west. We'll probably do one in Atlanta, out west meaning like California. We'll definitely do one up and around northern New Jersey, New York. We don't have all the dates yet, but look for that. Also, if you haven't already, go out to the silver level again. Look on the left and look for the button that says Cash Report or Cash Buyer Report. Now you can locate who the cash buyers are in your area. So that's live now. You guys get to use it. Go ahead and use that. And some other good news, we're going to go ahead and purchase a license to give you a report of who the private lenders are in your area. So we don't have that nailed down tight yet, but we should have that for you certainly by January, if not the end of December. By the way, speaking of private money, make sure you're all on the webinar on December 13th. We got a special guest on from New York. He's a private lender, and he lends in all 48 of the lower 48 states. So you definitely want to participate in that, guys. Any case, let's see. I think that's it. I might have one more question here. Hang on one second. We do. So, guys, let me go through a couple more questions here. Okay, this is from Bernard. Hey, Bernard. All right, Bernard is asking, okay, recommendations on properly transitioning. Let's see. Recommendations on properly transitioning a dialogue with a prospective seller if you're in a listing dialogue and discover you'd like to buy it. Well, Bernard, the first thing is when you're an investor and an agent, you obviously can wear both hats, but usually not at the same time. I mean, you can. But when you're going to look at a property or approach a seller, always have an original intent right out of the bat. So your intent might be, I want to buy a property myself. So that's your intent. You go in there, let's say it doesn't work. You can always switch gears and say, you know what, this won't work for me, but I bet you if you let me sell it for you, I can find you a buyer who this does work for. So you can put on your, so generally that transition does work, Bernard. You can go from investor to agent literally within 60 seconds. But going from the investor intent, going from the agent intent to the investor intent, that can often raise eyebrows. They're going to look at you like, wait a minute, you just did the bait and switch on me. So bear in mind, Bernard, that going from investor to agent is one thing. Going from agent to investor could often cause you some negative responses, okay? Let's see, Yoko. Okay, I tried going into banks today, 4 different ones, and none of them knew what I was talking about when asking. Okay, you're doing a banker approach. So Yoko, do me a favor, set up a strategy call, and let's go over that in great detail, because that's a whole different, that would take another hour, but we want to have a strategy call with you on that one, okay? Okay, let's see, Mark. You're welcome, Mark. Glad to hear from you, Mark, too, by the way. Jackie says thank you. And let's see, what was the rest? Oh, take care of that cold. I know. Hey, Jackie, this has been dragging on, hasn't it? I'm actually getting close to the end here. Hopefully, I'll be in I'll be in Arizona Thursday and Friday, and in California after that. Maybe that weather will do the trick. So, okay, guys, listen. I hope you have an awesome night. God bless you and your families. Have an awesome rest of the week, and we will see you next week, by the way, which is going to be on Wednesday the 6th, and I'll be doing that from will it be Fremont, California, southeast Bay Area. Get to see some old friends out there too. So, you guys have an awesome week, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.